Mhm. So, hi again, everyone. I am so happy to see all of you. And before we start, I want to say a few words. My name is Oleksii Vinogradov, and I'm the IAAGT Research Committee liaison. And I want to say a little introduction for this lecture. And historically, the volume of scientific research in Gestalt therapy has been quite modest. But in the last few years, our community has started to focus on it much, much more. And I think this is a very important trend. And it helps Gestalt therapy become more respected and recognizable among other therapy schools. And in our research, in our IAGT Research Committee, we've been talking about how to support this trend, and we want to bring more people into the research field and show how all the sorry, I'm worried a bit. And we want to show you all the interesting and important things happening here in research field. And it's a cool, interesting, and inspiring field as for me. And we also want to inspire new researchers to take their first steps in Gestalt therapy, in Gestalt research, even if they don't know yet that they are young researchers for now. And that's why we starting this series of lectures. We will be inviting experts to share their research experience with us. And today is our very first lecture, which called From Aesthetic Perception of Contact to Scientific Evidence, how we research contact in the Gestalt therapy. And our speaker today is Margherita Spagnuolo Lobb, someone who was done incredible work for Gestalt research field, and what's very fascinating, continue to lead the way and to do a big contribution in research field. And before I hand over to Margarita, I have some quick thanks. Thanks for IAGT Research Committee for organizing this lecture. And I want to ask you to raise a hand, IAGT Research Committees, and we can see all of us. A button, raise a hand, and you will be in the first screen. Yeah. Sorry, Victoria, and I don't see Victor. Yeah. Okay. And also, huge thanks to Margarita for being here and sharing your unique knowledge. Really, we appreciate it. Also, thanks to IAGT generally, to this organization for making this project possible and for supporting us every step of the way of organizing this lecture, and for being such a great community. And if you aren't a member yet, I really think that you definitely need to join us, to join IAGT. And thanks to all of you, who came to this lecture. Really, today we have so many people. Now it's more than 350, and probably it would be more. It's very, very fascinating, very inspiring, and it's great to see such a huge interest in this topic, in this research field. And one last thing, I can also, you can also support us. You can also say thank you to us. And if you would like, you can make a donation to our research committee. This money will go for supporting for new researches I mentioned before. And I'll put the link in the chat, and you will see how to do it. Also, during the lecture, you can write your questions in the chat. I will put this question in a list and I will ask them to Margarita in the end. And this all for me. Margarita, I give you a word.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Oleksii, for having organized this very timely seminar about researching in Gestalt therapy. You can see how much interest there is on this topic. And thank you to all of you who are here. I'm very excited by seeing lots of faces, and especially the friends that I can see. I know many of you, but Perry, Otto, Sarah, and Claire, and Ansel. Hello, Ansel, and Freedom, and so many, and Vitaly, and Felicia. Felicia, Carol, yes. So many people, and Karen, and so I excuse myself if I don't mention all of you, but it's a really pleasure to see you here, and I hope that we can have a vital exchange about researching in Gestalt therapy. So I will show. I will.
Sorry, Margarita, I need to say a few words more to Ukrainian colleagues about interpretation.
Yes,
Okay?
Thank you very much to the
Okay.
Ukrainian colleagues for the interpretation. And
No, I mean, I need to say in Ukrainian language. So, колеги, якщо ви хочете мати переклад, внизу є кнопка Interpretation або переклад, і вам треба вибрати German, німецьку мову. Не питайте чому, це просто такі налаштування. Якщо ви виберете в Interpretation німецьку мову, ви побачите український переклад. Просто він називається іншим словом. Якщо будуть якісь питання, будь ласка, напишіть в чат, ми вам допоможемо. So, thank you, Mario. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Yes. Okay, so I will use slides because I feel more grounded when I use slides, because I'm not a native English speaker, and I think the slides can be clearer. And I will try to also to have some moments of experiments, and then we will, after 1 hour, more or less 1 hour, I will close my speech and will ask you about your questions, and then so we can have a dialogue at the end. Okay, ready? This is the title. From aesthetic perception of contact to scientific evidence. So how can we do research via on this very interesting concept that we have, that is contact making. We can identify 3 aspects that characterize the contemporary relational, so-called relational Gestalt therapy, so that we can see how these concepts can be researched. So the first is the phenomenological method, the second is the aesthetic tools, and the third is the field. There are many meanings of field, but I mean the field as a situation. So like a procedural, ongoing experience of contact making between therapist and client. So this is the situation that we want to research. And the fourth aspect is the development of society. So all these main concepts that have been have characterized the beginning of Gestalt therapy. Now they need to be developed into what society is bringing to us. So new pathologies that bring us to work on the ground experience. So instead of taking some grounded experience for granted, we need to work to build the safety of the ground, to provide the patient with a sense of safety. So all these 4 aspects have guided me in doing research. The first aspect, phenomenology. Phenomenology is the epistemology that supports all reflections about intentionality, that in Gestalt therapy terms we might call excitement for contact or now for next, and also the body in contact. It's very difficult to define intentionality, but if we want to use it for our purpose, maybe the concept of excitement for contact could be a good translation, let's say. Phenomenology is a method. It's not a psychotherapy method. It's a method to observe and describe human relationships, starting from the here and now as it is intentioned in the near future. So instead of making classifications and evaluations, it stays. Okay. It stays with what is, with an ecstatic attitude, trusting how the here and now will develop into an unknown next. The choice of our founders was for the here and now of the therapeutic relationship, the only reality that we can experience, not for ontological concepts about human beings. So they make this choice to study the here and now of the therapeutic experience. And some neuroscientific researchers, a few decades later, has chosen to study the neurological evidence of relational experience. And research about intentional movements, for instance, on mirror neurons, embodied empathy, intentional movements, especially from a group of Parma, Gallese and colleagues. They have studied what are the structures in our brain that let us understand the intentional movements of the others. And also research about relational diseases in post-traumatic disorders like van der Kolk, Porges, Miriam Taylor, and Kepner. They have studied trauma. And also studies about the relational mind from Seikula, for instance. He was one of the first. And all these studies have helped us to unpack what, in the language of psychotherapists, were global concepts like intentionality for contact or contact processes or co-creating a contact boundary. All these main concepts can now be unpacked by this research. What do we mean by these concepts? The other big topic is aesthetics. The aesthetics tool are our way to know the therapeutic situation, to know the other via our bodily awareness. Research that have outlined the depth of implicit knowledge and interventions are important for us because they tell us something about what is this aesthetic intuition of the therapist. Not many research about aesthetic tools are used in psychotherapy. So this is a particular thing that we can develop because nobody researches on aesthetic tools, or very few. Infant research led by Daniel Stern and colleagues already in the 80s have considered bodily or implicit relational competences as parallel to verbal or explicit competences. So Daniel Stern, he was a psychoanalyst and he studied children and caregiver and child dialogue, and he came out with this very revolutionary concept that implicit knowledge is not less important than verbal knowledge or explicit knowledge. He even said that implicit knowledge, not only between caregivers and child, but also between therapist and client, it is more important than explicit competences. So these researchers have described how the child builds his self based on procedural learnings from interactions with caregivers. So they spoke of a process, like we speak of process in Gestalt therapy, and how they described how the experience of the body includes a sophisticated knowledge of the other, and is able to manage the complexity of the interaction, So that sophisticated knowledge is connected with the complexity of the interaction. These processes, described by a somehow dissident psychoanalyst who was Daniel Stern, have helped us to contextualize in a more accurate theoretical frame what we, Gestalt therapists, already did, drawing on our bodily awareness. The third concept is the field. Is the field. Field is the experience that emerges in contact making. These theoretical glance make us turn the individualistic paradigm into a relational one that belongs to the field perspective. Like our founders wrote, it has no meaning to speak of the breather without speaking of the air. And also they wrote, every time that there is a contact boundary, there is a field. So although there are many approaches of the field, Gestalt therapy has a specific glance, the field as the therapeutic situation. So a procedural ongoing experience co-created by therapist and client. Our concept of field has to do with the co-creation of a contact boundary. This is what our founders wrote. And therefore, with the reciprocity of the therapist-patient interaction with what I call the dance of reciprocity. The paradigm of responsiveness has been studied by Stiles and his colleagues in 1998, and they define as behaviors influenced by emerging events, such as therapists being influenced by and responding to what clients do, something that occurs on all time scales, from months to milliseconds in the human context, something that is a challenge for and undermines psychotherapy research. Yes, so Stiles said that the responsiveness of the therapist is something that happens but creates some challenge to research. And finally, the social context that has drastically changed in these last decades. A radical turn in human suffering happened. People have been much more exposed to traumatic experiences, and primary constitutive relationships have been less and less containing. So in therapy, we are brought to focus our caring glance more on the ground experience than on the figure. It means that we aim to create the safe ground for the client in order to work afterward to work on the figure. A client who doesn't know whether to stay in a relationship or not, for instance, he comes to therapy with this issue. Do I have to stay in the relationship or not? We cannot assume that the client can rely on a sure ground experience. So we cannot tell the client, you know what you want. What clients need today is to feel the space between them safe enough to exhale and feel who they are. And this was taken for granted decades ago. This turn in the therapeutic relationship has brought us to develop new therapeutic tools and to focus on the ground experience and on attachment schemas or previously acquired relational knowledge. Psychotherapy research is challenged to study new tools that support the sense of safety of the client in contact with the therapist. So, what can be Gestalt therapy's peculiar contribution to psychotherapy research? I refer to this book about two books, the two books that Yarubal and Phil Brownell have edited about research in Gestalt therapy. The research can be considered like an ethical duty, which means being curious, because nothing is for granted. And also, second aim of research is compare with other colleagues, compare our results with our colleagues on what we do and how we do it. So the questions that come from this is, does Gestalt therapy work? How much do patients improve compared to other approaches? This can be one question. Another question is why and how Gestalt therapy works, which is much more interesting because we all know since decades that every approach works. The good therapeutic work is more connected with the person of the therapist than to the method. So every method works. And nevertheless, we need to prove that Gestalt therapy works, especially to governments. But the most interesting question is, why does it work and how does it work? So from the first question, we have quantitative research. From the second question, we have qualitative research. Gestalt therapy qualitative research studies what is interesting to study, given what we said before about the main concepts of Gestalt therapy. One thing could be the intentional processes of both therapist and client. So how the intentionality of therapist and client meet. This is an interesting contribution that Gestalt therapy can give to all other methods. The second thing is the aesthetic tools with which we view the therapeutic interaction. So our magic, Gestalt therapy is magic. How can we describe our magic with our clients? And the third aspect could be the therapeutic situation as a field phenomenon. So how can we research on the field phenomenon? One problem of research is that it is usually evaluative. No? This is something that has made research not nice, not good for Gestalt therapists. Because when we speak of research, it seems that it's an obligation is to speak of evaluation. The medical model uses Cartesian dichotomies. And this might bring us to speak of good contact, good intervention. Is this what we want? This is not what we want. But phenomenological approach or analysis bring us to research on something different. Not what is good and what is not good, but the therapist perceived this, the client perceived this, and together they did this. This is what we are interested into. So to stay with the discovery of dimensional aspects away from evaluative attitudes. So what can we say of non-evaluative attitude in research? What are the limits and contradiction? Outcome research is important, and we need to produce it. as I said, for governments. In qualitative research, a challenge for Gestalt therapy research is not to be seduced by the tendency to evaluate and control. This is a seduction for researchers when, in general, when they want to try to evaluate or foresee what will happen in the therapeutic relationship. But Gestalt therapy cannot be seduced by this, by control. What we observe between patient and therapist is an unpredictable creative adjustment. This is what Persephone and Goodman have taught us. What is healthy is creative and unpredictable. So how can we research the unpredictable? The difference between a medical model and a phenomenological method is that the psychotherapist and the researcher has an ecstatic attitude, not a controlling attitude. So we are researchers with an ecstatic attitude. We don't want to control. Our way of navigating complexity is not to create theories or schemas that can control it, the complexity. For example, by predicting the patient's next developmental step. A fundamental characteristic of the Gestalt method is to consider each patient's experience as unique and not predictable. We are not devoted to control. A single case time series is a good combination, for instance. It's a good research for us. Or also to describe a key aspect of the Gestalt therapist's skills, namely his or her intuitive ability. What dimensions it consists of and how these dimensions develop in psychotherapy training. So this is something that it is in line with our epistemology to describe some key aspects of Gestalt therapy skills, like, for instance, intuitive ability. Or we can describe what happens between therapist and patient during the session, the dimensions of their reciprocity to capture their dance and use that description as a tool for supervision or research. So here I like to bring some examples of research. They are just examples. There can be many examples of Gestalt therapy research, and I'm sure that many of you already do this very interesting research, qualitative, but also mixed methods, qualitative and quantitative. So I speak to you of some examples that I follow now. The here now, the therapeutic situation as it is intended in the immediate future. This is what I'm interested in and what happens at the contact boundary between therapist and patient, namely the relational processes, what they do together, so their reciprocities and their alliance. Also, I'm interested in the processes by which vitality is sustained and maintained in their interaction. Our founders made the choice to stay with the vitality of the client. They even criticized psychoanalysis with the concept of egotism, because it was the client that knows everything about him or herself, but they don't get the vitality. So how can we study the vitality and how we maintain it in our client? This would be a very interesting contribution for other methods. The aesthetic tools by which the therapist intuits the patient's situation and promotes processes of change. And also the processes of change as support for the patient's relational intentionality, which in suffering has been deadened. Another aspect could be the situational, for instance, field understanding of what is happening in the setting. So these are all examples. The therapist's intuition or counter-transference or responsivity as the ability to know the situation on an aesthetic level. This is something that we do, and we do it spontaneously. It would be interesting to describe what we do with our aesthetic intuition. And change process from the perspective of reciprocity or synchrony between therapist and patient is also the other. These are the two current of research that I follow. Therapist intuition and the reciprocity. First question, how does a Gestalt therapist intuit the situation? How a Gestalt therapist uses their senses to intuit the relational experience of the client. This intuition is tailored on each specific client, and each psychotherapist sees something unique and different from other therapists. Different therapists see different things. When the therapist is fully present with the client, even if what they do is different from what another therapist does, they can see aspects of the client experience that are deep and meaningful for that client. This is an aesthetic intuition, in line with what Gestalt therapists learn when they work on themselves and use bodily experience as a therapeutic tool. So we don't think that a therapist has the truth about a client. A therapist is what he or she is. A therapist is a person, and the interaction with the client is unique. And it's the uniqueness of the relationship that creates the good result of the therapist, not the fact that the therapist knows something that is the truth of the client. To intuit the patient's birth order, for instance, and the situation from which their experience emerged, what they expect, and how they adjust to it. So this is something that I like to guess. Sometimes I can do it. When I see a client, I can say his or her birth order, if they are a first child, second child, etc. The Gestalt therapist doesn't use interpretations nor cognitive schemas. We wonder, what is the point of reference of such an acute understanding? I tried to describe this peculiar capacity of the Gestalt therapist with the concept of aesthetic relational knowing. The therapist's relational and aesthetic intuition of fields aspect. This is the aesthetic relational knowing. A contribution from Gestalt therapy to describe the complexity of the intuition and responsiveness of the therapist. What can we find about this in literature? Not Gestalt therapy literature, in research literature. Although there are many studies on the relational skills of psychotherapists, and we can, Wampel or Linsky have studied a lot about this, there are no studies that specifically indicate the therapist's relational and aesthetic intuition of fields aspects and its development during training. So I have developed with colleagues, I have developed a questionnaire that firstly was 58 items. We took some items from the empathy scale and from bodily awareness scale. And we published the first article, and then a first article, and then this last article. This competence is made of 3 factors: empathy, resonance, and bodily awareness. So a previous scale was made of 58 items and was based on this multidimensional assessment of interoceptive awareness, basic empathy scale, and a group of questions ad hoc on resonance. And we have explored therapist's ability to intuit the patient relational dynamics, connect suffering with one's own experiences and bodily processes, empathize with caregivers and significant others of the client, identify what the patient lacked in key relationships, and also items adjusted via expert, where the items were adapted via the proof of judges method. We let some expert evaluate these items, and they could refer each item to the dimensions that we were studying. So we reached the second instrument 46 items. And this first instrument was about simply aesthetic relational knowing, but it was not referred to the therapeutic situation. And we had an interesting comment from one of the reviewers of the journal that this is not referred to the situational therapy, and it was correct. So we created another instrument that was referred just to the therapeutic situation. And this instrument was reduced to 20, first it was of 46 items, and then thanks to the research, it was reduced to 21 items. 8 about bodily awareness, 8 about intuitive resonance, and 5 about affective empathy. In this link, you can download the article that brings the scale. So you have the scale in this article. It's a free access scale. Some examples of these factors can be affective empathy questions like, I get scared when I look at the characters in a good scary movie. Affective empathy is the empathy, the therapist's ability to identify with the patient's emotions, but includes emotional empathy or contagion, because empathy has been studied widely. And they have distinguished between emotional empathy and the cognitive empathy. So this item was this factor is more about emotional empathy. Then bodily awareness, as the therapist's interoceptive ability to recognize the emotional bodily activation in their own body. So how they can perceive the activation in their own body when they see some emotion in another person. So when I'm tense, I notice where the tension is located in my body. This is about. I notice changes in my breathing, for example, if it slows down or speeds up. And intuitive resonance is about the ability of the therapist to fully immerse themselves in the situation, like Georges Volans has taught us, and experience the other side of the moon of the patient's feeling, so the feeling of the other with whom the experience has been co-created. This is the most challenging part of the scale, because the field experience includes a synchronic, embodied relationship of a co-created experience. The therapist feels part of the patient's experiential field and uses his or her own resonance to know the other side of the moon of the patient's suffering. So, for instance, I can feel what people who enter into a relationship with a patient feel. We can feel the other, like the other. And this is also, it's recognized by neurosciences with the mirror neurons. We can resonate with what the habitual other feels. I'm unable to imagine the patient, the people related to him in his past. This is negative. I'm able to guess what was going on in my patient's relationships where suffering arose. So when the suffering rose, I'm able to understand what was going on. We used a sample of 209 psychotherapists, 51 women, more women because this is the proportion of psychotherapists aged from 25 to 80. The instrument was this instrument of 46 items. The therapist answered to online questionnaire that also answered to social demographic questions. And then we conducted exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis and reliability. These therapists were from all methods, not only from Gestalt therapy. The research was approved by the Ethics Review Board of the University in Catania. These are some characteristic of the sample. Large experience were 29, from 5 to 10 years, above 29.7%, from 10 to 20, 22%. It was well balanced. Majority females and different psychotherapeutic approaches, only 33.5% from Gestalt therapy. So the total scale had alpha Cronbach of quite good, 0.841. The subscales were also very good. And there was a good, a good reliability and clinical utility. How can we use the scale, the ARC? The scale supports the therapist to understand the patient's suffering in the field perspective, thanks to their isomorphic and aesthetic capacity. So a therapist can use the items also for one client to understand if he or she is able to see all those, is good in all those factors, The scale can describe the degree by which the therapists can immerse themselves in the phenomenological field that is co-created with the patient. As our phenomenologist, father phenomenologist said, it's a reliable tool to monitor the therapist's ability to be intuitive and responsive to the patient's request and to the situation. Also about what styles was as researched about responsivity, and Watson and Weissman has researched about the reciprocity and responsivity, providing the relational support that is needed by the patient in the therapeutic situation. It's possible to monitor this competence in students in training and for supervision of the three factors of the aesthetic, relational, knowing. Empathy is the less sensitive to training. This is interesting because we have done a research to measure how this capacity is at the beginning of the training, at the end of the training. And it seems that the only factor that is less sensitive to training is empathy. Other research have studied about this. It's because it seems that empathy is something that you already have when you choose to become a therapist. So it doesn't change much, but the bodily awareness and resonance, they change in training. The scale can be used in any psychotherapy training. It describes a transmodal competence that any expert psychotherapist uses, even if with different languages. So this is also interesting. It's really a contribution that Gestalt therapy can give to other approaches, because also other therapists, psychoanalysts, psychodynamic, body therapists, they also use this competence. Okay, now just I'd like to ask you to pause a moment, slow down a moment, to ask you to think to a client of yours that you would like to understand better. Think to a client and focus on a typical movement of this person that impresses you during sessions. Typical movement. A movement that would make you recognize the person among hundreds of people. And now answer to these questions. What do you feel as a therapist in being with this client? And what do you think that you're feeling? What meaning do you think your feeling has in the client's life? If you feel bored, or you feel excited, or something that you feel in front of this specific movement, what meaning does it have in the life of the client? Who else has been excited? Or how excitement or boredom has been important in the life of the client? And the third question is, what should change in your experiential approach in order for the client to be more spontaneous? So if you feel bored with this client, what should change in you, in your experience with this client, in order for the client to be more spontaneous and so that you are not bored anymore? How should you change to be less bored? Which means how the field of the client should change. These three questions may help therapists to reflect on their therapeutic process with a particular client. I use them both in training and supervision programs. Okay, I would like now to go to the other research, which is about responsiveness and reciprocity. I'd like to give some context of this research on reciprocity. Reciprocity is a multidimensional construct that is part of many research. For instance, therapeutic alliance studies. There are many researchers that have studied the therapeutic alliance. It's a huge topic in psychotherapy research. Flukinger, Einonen, and many other, Nissen Lee, many others. But this construct of reciprocity has also to do with the process of change. And Robert Elliott has studied a lot about the process of change. It has to do also with synchronicity. And Shaker and collaborators have studied about synchronicity. Also about the so-called relational mind. Seikula has, in Finland, has studied this. Also about specific events. What is meaningful in the therapeutic session? So specific events, this Krauss and Altimir. Also about responsiveness. As I said before, Stiles and colleagues and Watson and Wiseman have studied very interesting research about responsiveness, the responsiveness of the therapist. This thing that seems being not explained by research, but it's a quality of the therapist that is very meaningful for a good result. And also humanistic studies on the experience of movement, like Maxime Sheets Johnston. Also clinical studies like the ones by Stern and cooperators, Bibb and Lachman. and also neurobiology of primary relationships and post-traumatic reactions. Today, there are very, very interesting research about neurobiology of attachment. Siegel, Shore and Shore, Porges, van der Kolk, and Odgen. So after reading all this literature, the question is, what creates the experience of change? The dance of reciprocity, what I call the dance of reciprocity. So how the change emerges from the dance of reciprocity. The childish vitality that our founders wanted to keep in their clients again comes back. Now, how can we find a childish vitality in psychopathological processes? The aesthetic relational knowing is helpful to trace vitality that is still present and tailor therapeutic interventions on that specific relational pattern that the client expects to happen. This is long, I will stop a while, introducing some novelty in the interaction that allows the client to experiment a more spontaneous way of being with the therapist. So why aesthetic relational knowing is so useful? Because first of all, we can see where the intentionality is, what makes us vibrate when we stay with the client, what attracts us, like what attracts us when we see a masterpiece. So when we see a beautiful painting, what does attract us? It's the same thing. Our client is like a masterpiece, and we feel attracted by this. The aesthetic intuition, the aesthetic knowledge of the client is about this, to trace the vitality of the client, but also it allows the therapist to see how this vitality is habitually connected in a alliance, in a field where the experience has been created with someone else. So not only we know what the client feels and what you'd like to develop in his intentionality, but we also know what the meaningful other feels, because the client expects something from us. Like a person who is ashamed about his emotions, it's difficult for him to express these emotions because he expects from us to be maybe scolded, or he expects a negative reaction from us. And we feel that in our body. We feel like an impact of the client to our body, to our body. No? We feel what the client expects from us. So this allows us to tailor our intervention better, because we know what he expects from the habitual other, and we know what we can do differently. The dance that creates the experience of change includes the paradigm of reciprocity. What heals is the dance between therapist and client, not a specific intervention, one intervention, but the dance. And the dance is a process of intentional micro-movements that develop into a therapeutic dance. So from the aesthetic relational knowing, we know how to move with the client, with the dance, like being very sensitive to his coming back to us, and then we change ourselves, going back to the client, back and forth, intentional micro-movements. Of course, Ruela's approach is very important here. Why is it important to look at the dance? An overordinated motivation to recognize and be recognized by the other is in one's own intentionality is more relevant in human interaction than individual needs, both in child development and therapeutic change. So we don't speak about needs, individual needs. We speak about the need to be recognized by the other. So our needs are relational. the need to be recognized, and the need to reach out to the other. And this is true both in child development and in therapeutic change. What do they do together, the therapist and client, when they co-create an experience of change? How do they manage their intentionality for contact, reaching each other, recognizing each other's movement towards, being available to change themselves, adjusting to the other, proposing a novelty that allows to go out of the routine, acknowledging what they have done. So this is how I started to describe what they do together. How do they manage their intentionality? It's not just what they do, but what they do with their intentionality. And so it seemed to me that in the first moment, they do certain things, then they do other things, then they do other things. So I studied what happens between them in a session. The dance that created the experience of change is made. I described 8 dance steps. The steps creates the experience of change. The steps happen in a session. I have looked both at the therapeutic situation and at primary relationships between caregiver and child. And these are the steps that I have described. First thing is building together the sense of the ground. So the first step, let's take therapist and client for the moment. The first thing they do is to create a safe ground, breathing together, sitting in a relaxed way, being in contact with the body, with one's own body. Then they open their senses to perceive the other. So who am I in front? Who am I, and who is in front of me? So there is an activation of relational energy given by mutual perceptions created by the contact senses. And then they start to be curious about the other. Where does the other want to go? How is my client? How is my therapist? What is intention today? Where does he want to go? And then they start to work on a topic, and they adjust to the other to work on this topic. Attuning and being attuned, feeling what the other feels, resonating, responding with one's own presence and creative differentness. So they do a flexible sequence of intentional movements related to different contact moments. Then they take both steps together. It's what we call experiment. There are times when therapist and client do something together, which unlocks a fixed gestalt and directs them towards a third element, thus releasing them from an impasse. They do something new. We know very well this with the experiment. And then sometimes they have fun. So they laugh together. They have good moments together. They enjoy being in one another's presence and experience moments of light-heartedness. This is something that is not usually is not researched, but to have fun is important from a relational point of view and also intentional point of view. And then they connect to each other. So they have the feeling that they have done something meaningful, and they also feel an agent. So they know they can do things and they can connect what they have done with their life. They give a meaning to the interaction. And the last thing is to saying goodbye or entrusting, also saying goodbye, which includes also a sense of intimacy. So the client is capable of letting go the therapist, and the therapist feels able to take care and to let go. So there is a shared sense of intimacy, and also they do something to say goodbye, to close the experience. So the 8 dance steps between caregiver and child. Okay, I go a little. I go faster because we don't have much time. We have done we are doing 2 kinds of research about dance steps. One is about child and caregiver, and the other is about therapist and client. This is an article about, it's a pilot study of agreed to observe caregiver and child interaction, how to observe the phenomenology and aesthetics of primary relationships, the dance steps of reciprocity between caregivers and infant-child, pilot validity study. These are the research goals, to create a valuable grid to observe. But very interesting things came out from these pre-verbal babies, 6, 9, 12 months. And they were observed in these 3 moments of their life. And some co-occurrences between behavioral flows of the child and caregiver came out. Now, this is the description of all the research that was long and complex. These are the analyses that were conducted, inter-rater agreement, and then the observation of videos. This is an example of the grid. These are the factors, the steps. And these are examples of behaviors of the mother, the caregiver, and examples of the behavior of the child. And in the video, the raters rated these behaviors in the video. I want to read you the last result, the last sentence. The health of the caregiver-child relational dance does not coincide with the presence of stable interactive patterns during the first months of the child's life, but on the contrary, with its dynamism. So the good mother is the mother that adjusts to the different needs of the child. But this is, it should be, it deserves more time, and we don't have so much time now. Now about the therapeutic process. The therapeutic process is seen as a process of contact that develops basing on different steps characterized by mutual intentional movements of therapist and client that create a dance of reciprocity. The dance steps model describes how client and therapist develop and match their therapeutic intentionality during the session. Therapeutic alliance is seen as emerging from microprocesses of mutual recognition of intentionality of contact during the session, and the process of change is seen as emerging from a situational field where therapist and client adjust to each other and co-create a novelty in their interaction, where both therapist and client experience themselves with a broader awareness and new possibilities of contacting the environment. Okay, these are the steps that we already saw. So this research is on, and we are seeing videos of sessions, and we are trying to rate the steps in this session. So the process we are doing now is the inter-rater validity. But to have this, so inter-rater validity means that hopefully different raters, different therapists who see the same video, rate the same step in different moments. And we are doing a very interesting work because people, it's interesting to see a video of a session and to have this, to try to understand the intentionality of therapist and client in these sessions. There are 11 countries that are involved, and each one is a local group of researchers. This qualitative research is supervised by Robert Elliott. The coordinators are Giacomo Bisonti and Mattia Romano, two young researchers. And these are the point of reference of different countries. And some of you is here. Oleksii is here, and also Otto is here. So some of you are part of this research. So what we are trying to do is, we are defining a self-report of the therapist and the client feel after one session every 6 months. But the most important thing is this grid. This is an example of the first step. What's the intentionality of contact in the first step? What's the perception of the client? What's the perception of the therapist? What are the signs in the client? What are the signs in the therapist? What are the signs of synchronization between therapist and client? So with this grid, we are exploring sessions between therapist and client. Let's see. We can do many things from this. We can use it about describing the experience of the therapist in the different done steps, also to see what they do in different moments of the session, to understand more in detail what movements, feelings, and kind of alliance can create the experience of change. It can be used in supervision to reflect on the process of change of our clients. It can be used inside the single case time series method to accomplish the qualitative part of this method, to reflect on different populations of patients and of therapists. For instance, how is the dance between therapist and depressed client? How is the dance between OCD clients and their therapist? To develop our clinical method, Gestalt therapy, also for intervention groups with psychotherapists from different modalities. So it can be used for psychotherapy training, for supervision, and for research on procedural dimensions. And as I said, I go quickly because you can have the slides. These are articles where this study has been published, articles about the shift from an individualistic technique to a relational dance of reciprocity, articles that propose a phenomenological, aesthetic, and field-oriented framework of Gestalt therapy research, articles on the dance steps model, and article on the aesthetic relational knowing. So there is a responsibility to show what we do as we have fun, let's say, in our practice, because we enjoy our practice while discovering new territories to advance our humanity. And we certainly cannot become evaluative, not controlling, when we do research. We better keep our unique spirit ecstatic, aesthetic, and open to an unpredictability of creativity. We cannot change nor betray our way of being Gestalt therapist when we do research. Our goal seems to explore the realm of the experience of playing with the other, to co-create a new form, a new dance with the other. The prime motivation being not the individual need, for instance, of acceptance or of certain personal feelings, but the curiosity to know, to be with the other. Okay, this is my town, Syracuse.
Thank you very much, Margarita, for this wonderful lecture. And I want to ask the main question from people. Do they can reach this presentation? Will you send the presentation?
Yes, I will send the slides, sure.
Yeah, great. So I will send a link for record of this lecture and presentation via email. And I think we have a time for question, right?
Yes.
Margarita, early on, you mentioned that Gestalt therapy was an effective approach. In the US, we don't have research that suggests that. Do you have any thoughts about that?
About the situation in US?
Yes.
I mean, you don't have so much spread and research in Gestalt therapy?
Right. There are bodies that determine whether an approach is evidence-based or not. Gestalt therapy is not considered an evidence-based practice here.
Oh, okay. But that's not only US. There is a huge power movement from the CBT because, you know, they say they are evidence-based and they take everything. They take compassion therapy. They take a lot of techniques or methods that are beyond their epistemology, their original epistemology. So I'm convinced this is like a business aspect or power aspect. And that's why it's very important that we also raise our voices,
They're doing comparative research, and I think that's the difference, is that they're showing their approach effective compared to other approaches. So they're doing quantitative research on it.
Okay, it's okay. Quantitative research is okay, but what we need to change about that, because we have been too much closed in our narcissistic pleasure of being good. So we are new to research. We are new to research. We need to grow for research and to create nets of researchers, to cooperate. I think it's our fault also. Well, Ansel is one of the few who did research in all his life.
Yeah, Julio, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Margarita.
Julio.
It's really nice to see you again.
Yes.
I met you here
I
in
read your
Mexico.
papers.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a great honor. Okay, I would like to ask you a question. Firstly of all, I would like to thank you about all the process you are doing. It's a great job you're doing with Gestalt therapy. And the benefits, of course, is going to be really great for all of us. But I think, especially in these times where evidence is something necessary, including, I could say that necessary to survive as an approach in therapy, I have seen that it's very difficult to be able to get that APA reports this evidence in their I think they are annual reports. What do you know about the process of being able to get that APA makes this evidence you're working in to make it accessible for everyone?
Where are you, Julio?
Is there any special process to be able to get this evident public in APA?
To have evidence process in?
Yeah, to make it public, because American Psychological Association,
APA.
yeah, the APA, it has a kind of report. I think it's a yearly report of the evidences, and most of evidence they are showing to the world is from behavioral therapy.
Well, I think it's an important thing what you are saying, and we can work on that. My first article on the aesthetic relational knowing was published by an APA journal, and no, I publish with American journals that are very much connected with APA. I think there is an open. I don't think they are against us,
Yeah.
but I think we need to show competence, to be competent in research. So we need to work. And where, Julio, where do you live? Where are you from?
In Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Outi.
Hello to everybody. Yes, and greetings from Finland. I've been studying Gestalt therapy in Denmark many years ago. My background is a Finnish teacher, and we have been very science-based so long in our school world. I've been working in the education ministry, but the tendency is now, because the world is so crazy in many ways, many things are upside down. So I have the feeling, and the researchers show that we need more trust ourselves and trust the worth of being a human being, and also this, just say, art. What is science and what is art? Art of connection and art of being a human being. So in Nordic countries, I think we have taken a big step now last years, because this Gestalt approach is so something that if you have strong, we are not competing. We do this from heart, and of course we need research. I have been working as a researcher, how we can manage our everyday life. And everybody said, no, you cannot get the grant because you don't have a big background as a researcher. I told, I'm a Gestalt therapist, and I bring you new approaches. And what happened? Everybody were so fascinated. So I want to thank you so much, and I will take contact later. I want to keep go with my studies in Italy. Okay, but I thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I think the need.
I will say a few.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I will say a few words in Ukrainian for Ukrainians about questions. Колеги, якщо у вас є питання, ви можете задавати їх українською мовою, написати в чат, і я передам їх Маргариті.
I want to speak from Ukrainian part, but in English. Margarita, thank you very much. I'm very glad to see you here. And I am really grateful for your fight for Gestalt therapy, because in Ukraine we also have this movement from CBT, especially now during the war, because they have these protocols and they think they are much better than Gestalt therapy. But I believe we are much deeper and more effective. And I'm glad, Lyosha, that you organized this big presence of Ukrainians here. And I hope we will join, because we are just too busy with this war situation, working, practicing. But we have also very big field for research, very special one. But I think it's a pity, but I think it's useful one, frankly. for now. Thank you once more. Very glad to see you.
Ina, I didn't see you before. It's wonderful that you are here. Wonderful to see you. Yes, and it's true. There's a very competent and strong community of Ukrainian colleagues who are cooperating with research. Yes.
Yes, I hope we will join this big movement.
Good.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ina. And one message. Thank you, Margarita. You are truly inspiration above your research. And one question. Sorry, I am unable to use my microphone. Thank you, Margarita, for the presentation. I'm a Gestalt therapist with research background from Macedonia, currently based in Rome. I'm doing basic training in research for Gestalt trainees, and I'm curious how I can get involved in the ongoing research processes that Margarita mentioned.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't need to answer to this, right?
I mean, you can answer what to do to join your research.
This is Anna. Anna who is writing, who is
Anna
Anna.
Bachevska.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes, 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 I know Anna. Okay. I think you can just write to me and I can answer to you.
There were email in presentation. I will send presentation. There is your email.
I send the presentation, yes. And if you want to join, maybe you can write to me.
Next question. There is a lot of questions. So what is the role of the European Association of Gestalt Therapy in doing research?
There is a research committee in the European Association for Gestalt Therapy. I'm part of this committee. So the committee is supporting this research. And also we are organizing, but not only with the IAAGT, also with the IAAGT, the next research conference in Rome. Maybe Oleksii, you already sent. Can I show the
Yes, of course.
The flyer, the save the date? We are working for the site now, and this is the next conference of Gestalt therapy research, and it will be in Rome. All these are the associations but even more association, because this is old. There is also the New York Institute for Gestalt Therapy and other associations that will join.
Okay, thank you. And Ansel. Ansel, do you want to ask something?
Ansel.
I want to thank you for your presentation, Margarita. Wonderful to see you and hear you. A magnificent piece of work. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks to you, Ansel. You have done so much for research in Gestalt therapy. You fought a lot because it was not easy at your time to do research. For me, it's a gift that you are here. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Ansel created a questionnaire, I think a scale, about... Okay.
And one more question. I participated in a research project studying efficiency of Gestalt methods. Who should I send it to? Alexandra McCracken asked.
Alexandra, studying efficacy of Gestalt. Oh, yeah. Well, send it to me.
Okay, will do.
Oh, good.
Okay, so we need to finish right now, and I want to say a few words in the end. Of course, Thank you very much, Margarita, and for your interesting and important presentation, for making us know what's happening in this research and maybe in broader field of Gestalt research. And also thank you for opening this project with your very first lecture. And thank you everyone for your participation, for your activity. And I want also say that you can support IAAGT Research Committee, and I will send the link. You can join IAAGT community. I also will send the link. And we as committee would be very grateful if you give us a few minutes and send feedback about this lecture, and we want to know what you liked, what you want to see, to know, and it would be really important for us to organize next events. So I put everything in the chat, all these links. And again, we will send all information about this lecture, recording, presentation via email, but not tomorrow. We need some time to do all the work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Oleksii. Thank you to all and to the translators.
Yes, thank you, Maria, for translation. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao, Claudio.
Ciao Margherita, grazie.
Thank you.
Grazie, Margherita.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Grazie.
Bye everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, Timo. Bye-bye.
Ciao, Friedhelm. Ciao.
Thank you.
So, Nicola, we can stop recording, I think.
Yes.
Can I make
Bye,
a
everyone.
quick comment?
Maria, дякую.